Hey guys, tonight we enter the cell. You're standing at the edge of a torchlit hallway. Somewhere deep beneath the Roman domus, a wealthy household. Echoing above with laughter, plates, and a flute that someone's playing way too enthusiastically for this hour. But you won't be seeing that part. You're going down. Down the stairs, past the storeroom, past the wine jars, past the vague smell of something pickled and possibly judgmental. At the end of this corridor is a low stone archway. Beyond it, darkness, heavy, humid, ancient, and inside that darkness, the Roman slave cell. A single glance tells you you're not surviving this. Not the way you think. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is, especially if it's past midnight. You're about to feel grateful for your mattress. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step inside immediately. The air changes. It's not just cooler, it's thicker. It clings to your skin. It doesn't move. It's the breath of 100 bodies sleeping, sweating, snoring. The smell, don't even ask. It's part mildew, part humanity, part whatever that bucket in the corner is fermenting. There's no light here. Just a thin slit of moon that filters through a grate high above, doing nothing useful. You move slowly, unsure where to put your feet. Every step risks stepping on someone. And the cell is full. Wall to wall. Maybe 20 people in a room meant for 10. Men. Women. A few older children all pressed together like they're waiting to be baked. A whisper from the back new one. Great. You've been noticed. A cough? A sniff? Someone groans. You look around if looking is the right word in a room that eats the light. Bodies are slumped in the corners. Some are chained. Others just know better than to move. The floor is a mix of cracked tiles, old straw, and something squishy that you pretend is fruit. You reach for the wall. Find rough stone, and then you hear it, the soft rattle of iron. Someone shifts nearby, and a metal collar clinks against their neck ring. That sound, that's your lullaby now. Historians still argue whether Roman slave cells were truly this overcrowded, or if the surviving descriptions exaggerate for effect. But the archaeological evidence shows packed, low-ceilinged rooms with minimal ventilation and even less mercy. And here's your first fringe tidbit of the night. Some wealthy Roman homes had rotating slave shifts sleeping in cycles, like sardines on a schedule. You're in the no-schedule variety. You'll sleep when someone moves enough for you to claim a knee's worth of floor. Your back finds a wall. You slide down, hug your knees. Try not to breathe too deeply. It's not even midnight yet. And already, you miss the air. You don't move. Mostly because you can't. Your knees are up against your chest. Your back pressed to a stone wall still warm from the last body that leaned against it. And your toes are dangerously close to someone else's elbow. You're not sure who it belongs to. You don't ask. It's better that way. The cell doesn't get quieter. It just gets heavier. Welcome to the Roman night shift where you don't sleep so much as endure a sequence of awkward positions, each one slightly worse than the last. Your right side begins to cramp. You shift a little. Bad move. You bump someone's leg. They grunt. You apologize without speaking. They roll over. Their iron chain drags across the floor, clinking like a warning. Now everyone knows you're new. The floor is its own kind of trapstone underneath, but littered with moldy straw. The straw is old. You can tell because it's no longer straw-colored. It's grayish, slightly damp, slightly sticky, definitely questionable. It's not soft. It's not warm. It's just there. Some slaves have a designated patch they sleep on, jealously guarded, reshaped nightly, reshuffled like property that no one really owns but everyone fights over. You're in the leftover space, the patch near the chamber pot, the bit where the roof drips every now and then, even though there hasn't been rain in 2 days. Your fringe detail tonight? Romans didn't always chain everyone inside these cells. Sometimes they just locked the doors and trusted that fear would keep people in place. But for the valuable slaves, the ones with skills, or those with an escape attempt on their resume chains, always chains. The man beside you has an iron ring locked around his ankle. It's connected to a thicker ring embedded in the wall by a long, rusted link. He doesn't sleep. He watches you with half-lidded eyes. You nod, trying not to look nervous. He doesn't nod back. The room is shaped like a squashed box. No windows. The air comes in through a small vent near the ceiling if the wind is generous. It's not. Tonight the air is still. It tastes like iron and ash. Every few minutes, someone coughs. A dry, rasping cough that doesn't go away. A few more groans, a whispered curse, someone muttering about a missing bread crust. You hear the faintest trickle of liquid? Somewhere near the far wall. Someone's given up waiting for the bucket. No one stops them. No one shames them. You tuck your arms tighter around your knees. Historians still debate whether elite Roman households truly kept slaves locked up at night, or simply assigned them to floor mats in unused storage rooms. But the fact remains underground cells like this existed, and the records aren't kind. You try lying down, there's no space. You wedge sideways, find a gap between two bodies. One stirs, one shifts, one doesn't move at all. You hope that's just deep sleep. The floor is colder now. The stone pulls heat from your body with surprising enthusiasm. You start to shake. Someone passes you a scrap of cloth frayed, slightly damp, but kind. You don't see who. You don't say thank you. Because this place isn't built for conversation. It's built for survival. And you've only just begun to understand what that means. You try breathing through your mouth now, because your nose has officially quit the job. The smell down here has entered its own dimension, less a scent, more a presence. It sits in your throat, curls around your ears, and introduces itself with all the grace of spoiled vinegar spilled onto warm meat. You take shallow breaths. It doesn't help. Why does it smell like that? Let's break it down. First, the obvious sweat. Not gentle jog-on-the-beach sweat. This is nervous. Unwashed, stress-fueled sweat from dozens of bodies pressed together like fallen dominoes in a too-small tomb. The kind that's soaked into every thread of tunic and every grain of straw. Next up, vinegar. Not the good kind. Not the drizzle-over salad kind. This is the vinegary tang of sour wine poured into buckets to clean things. Emphasis on the quotation marks. Guards might slosh some onto the floors occasionally. More likely, someone spilled a ration weeks ago and it never dried. Then there's the bucket. Oh yes, the bucket. Technically, there are two in the room. One for drinking sort of, and one for everything else definitely. They are not labeled. The difference is mostly theoretical and depends heavily on proximity, etiquette, and hope. You try not to look at them. You try not to smell them. Too late. You press the borrowed cloth to your face. It helps for 3 seconds. Then you realize the cloth smells like the room. Someone mutters nearby. Don't breathe too hard. You'll taste it. Too late for that. Historians still argue about the sanitation standards in Roman slave quarters. Some sources describe reasonably spaced communal latrines. Others, especially in elite homes, suggest that servants were expected to hold it or make do with chamber pots emptied once a day. If that, here you're in the if that category. Your fringe fact tonight. Ancient Romans sometimes sprinkled crushed mint leaves around banquet halls to cover up body odor and chamber pot smells. In slave cells, they didn't bother. Mint costs money. Shame is free. Back near the wall, someone retches. The guard outside doesn't respond. You get a whiff of old grain mash. Someone must have spilled a meal a few days ago and no one bothered to clean it. Mold now claims that spot, and the smell is part bread, part rot, and part something that might once have been cheese. The man to your left rolls over and exhales directly into your shoulder. You flinch. He's missing a few teeth and smells like fermented fish sauce. He doesn't apologize. Welcome to night 1. No blankets, no baths, no airflow. Just shared heat and the overwhelming aroma of lives stuck in repeat. You start to notice something new. Skin. Unwashed skin has a smell. Multiply it by 20. Add a few infected wounds. Mix in some garlic breath from that one guy who somehow always gets garlic. That's your atmosphere now. And it's getting warmer. You close your eyes. Pretend you're not here. Pretend you're back in your own bed, in your own time, with lavender candles and pillow spray and the option to crack a window. Instead, you inhale and instantly regret it. Someone belches, another groans in their sleep. And above it all, the heavy smell of hopelessness, that old metallic scent of bodies slowly breaking, of dignity left outside the door, of people reduced to scent and chain and nothing more. It's not just hard to survive in here, it's hard to breathe. The jingle hits first, not loud, not fast, but unmistakable. A lazy rattle of keys and chain links echoing from beyond the iron-reinforced door. The conversation in the cell, if you can call it that, dies instantly. No more whispers. No more fidgeting. Even the coughs seem to hold their breath. Because he's back. The guard, and he is not in a good mood. You scoot closer to the wall, instinctively trying to blend into the stonework, which is not very sympathetic. The footsteps are slow, deliberate, and full of that special kind of smug authority that says, I know you can't do a thing about this. You don't even have to see him to know the details. You can smell the wine on his breath. You can hear the iron studs on his sandals scrape the floor. You can feel the atmosphere shift around his presence, like the air itself has been slapped. Then clink. The latch lifts. The door doesn't open all the way. Just a creak. Just enough to cast a wedge of torchlight across the far side of the cell. The glow hits a few faces. No one blinks. Everyone stares at the ground. Still breathing in here, the guard grunts. It's not a question. It's a hobby. He steps inside. You watch as he scans the room, eyes trained more for disobedience than anything specific. One man shifts too loudly. The guard kicks him lightly, by Roman standards, and moves on. Historians still argue whether household slave guards had official ranks or were just trusted brutes with clubs. Some say they were ex-soldiers. Others think they were recruited from among the lower-ranking slaves paid in wine and silence. Either way, you don't want their attention. Your fringe detail tonight. Some guards named their keys. Seriously. One archaeologist found a scratched bronze tag on a ring labeled Vox Latin for voice. Possibly ironic. Possibly terrifying. Tonight's guard isn't in a talking mood. But he is in a testing one. He rattles the drinking bucket. Empty. That's your problem, he mutters. He moves to the waste bucket, wrinkles his nose. Doesn't empty it. He just nudges it further from the doorway with his foot and chuckles to himself like that was somehow generous. Someone coughs again. He spins. You again? The man doesn't respond. The guard steps forward. Everyone pretends they're asleep, including you, except your foot's too close to the center of the room. He sees it. You're new. You keep your eyes down. Say nothing. He crouches, leans in. The wine breath hits you like a slap. You get one question, he growls. Ask it, or I'll ask something worse. You swallow, and without meaning to, you whisper. What time is it? He laughs, a loud, humorless bark that echoes around the cell. Late enough? He says. Too early to die. Too late to sleep. But don't worry. You'll learn the schedule. Then he stands, spits sideways, and knocks twice on the wall near the door. His usual exit cue. He leaves without looking back. The door slams, the bolt drops, and the sound of keys fades into silence. No one speaks for a full minute. Then the whispering starts again, softer now. More careful. And somewhere near the back, someone mutters, better he laughs than he sings. You don't ask what that means, because you're starting to understand the rules in here. The guard isn't just a man with keys. He's the only thing between the cell and everything worse. And sometimes he's worse than all of it. You try not to look at it, but you're hungry, and it's there. The bowl, or pot, or maybe just a lump of clay that once had ambition. It sits in the center of the cell like a bad idea wrapped in steam. Tonight's dinner has arrived, and it smells edible. In the technical sense, if desperation were a seasoning, it would smell exactly like this. You inch forward, slowly, carefully, respectfully. Because getting food in a Roman slave cell is less about appetite and more about tactical survival. You pass a man with a split lip and a gaze like a warning flare. Someone else whispers, wait your turn. Though turns don't exist here, only elbows. Speed, and whether or not the guard still likes you, which, spoiler alert, he doesn't. You make it to the bowl. You peek inside. It's porridge. Technically, grain mash, watery, with the consistency of a shrug. Floating near the top is one pale bean. Singular. Probably symbolic. A bent spoon is stuck inside. No one knows where it came from. No one dares take it. You reach for it, hand trembling like it's your first crime. A voice beside you says, don't scrape the bottom. Someone already licked it? Cool. You take half a spoonful and back away before someone decides you're too slow. You sit, bring it to your lips. Warm, mushy, slightly tangy, like someone cooked sadness and left it in the sun. You find a piece of something chewy. It might have once been vegetable. Might also be a mistake. You swallow anyway. Historians still argue whether slave food was consistent or if it varied wildly by household. Some sources suggest a standard diet of grain mush with occasional beans or figs. Others describe leftovers from the master's table, reheated by moonlight and flavored with flour. Your fringe fact tonight. One surviving slave letter complains about bread that cracks the tooth and oil that tastes of rope. Yes, rope. You finish your portion. No one is full. But no one expected to be. Food down here is not nourishment, it's management. The pot is pulled away. Someone grunts. Someone else mutters a joke about the bean being promoted. You lean back, stomach twitching from too little too late. And now comes the worst part. Regret? Not because of guilt, but because it's going to come back up if you lie down too fast. You clutch your knees. Try to breathe slow. The man beside you sighs. You'll get used to it, he says. Then you'll stop getting used to things. That's when it's dangerous. You don't reply. You just nod, quietly wondering how anyone gets used to that taste. Then again, you're also wondering if it was a bean. You try to lean back. Finally, maybe catch a moment of rest, but a sharp elbow greets your ribs and reminds you of a hard truth that nobody warned you about. Even in a cage, there's a hierarchy. Because here in the cell, survival isn't equal. It's ranked. And guess what? You're at the bottom. You shift just enough to scan the room. There are no name tags, no uniforms. But make no mistake, there's a social map drawn in body language, tone, and floor space. Over by the wall, under the vent with that tiny trickle of air, that's where the senior slaves are, the long-timers, the trusted ones. They sleep closest to the draft. Not because it's the warmest it isn't, but because it's the driest. They've earned it or taken it. Then you've got the specialist cooks, scribes, stable boys who know how to read. They're in the corner near the food bowl. Not because they get extra, but because they get first. After that, it's the young and quiet, who curl together in little piles like cats. No one bothers them much. Not out of kindness, just because they're not a threat. And then there's you, the new one. No title, no allies, no mattress real estate. You sit near the bucket. Welcome to the floor map of power. Historians still argue whether slave cells in Roman homes truly developed internal hierarchies, or whether this is a projection based on modern prison sociology. But graffiti and fragmentary letters suggest that roles and routines absolutely emerged even in the dark. Your fringe detail tonight. Some senior household slaves were given titles and wore short red bands on their tunics to signal status caput familiae, not quite free, but definitely feared. The man beside you, chained but sitting straight, seems to be one of those. People glance at him before they speak. Even the guy with garlic breath nodded at him earlier. He hasn't said much, but when someone nearby shifts too loudly, he grunts, and the entire row goes still. Authority, it turns out, doesn't require keys, just confidence, and perhaps a well-timed growl. You feel someone kick your heel. Not hard, just enough to say move. You scoot sideways, give up another inch of straw. It's like playing a board game where the pieces have knives. No one here cares how scared you are. No one asks what you did to end up in the cell. Because it doesn't matter. Here, guilt is irrelevant. Crime is just context. And your worth is measured in two things. What you can do. Who cares if you disappear? So far, you've failed both categories. The man in the corner with the crooked nose leans over and whispers, "You'll need someone by daybreak. Pick fast, pick smart." You nod, like that makes sense. You don't ask what happens if you don't, because you're starting to see it written in the walls, in the silences, in the way nobody sleeps near the door. You look around again. Every breath, every stare, every curl of fingers around someone's scrap of tunic. It all says the same thing. Even in chains, people will build systems. Even in the dark, someone's always in charge. And tonight, it's not you. You're not asleep. No one is. Even though it's hours past the moment your body begged you to collapse and pretend the floor was soft and the air didn't taste like rust. But in here, night isn't for sleeping. It's for listening. You tilt your head back against the wall and take it in the soundscape of a Roman slave cell after dark. First, the snoring. Not gentle snoozes. Not romantic puffs of breath. This is a chorus of bodily exhaustion snorts, chokes, the rattling wheeze of someone with a cracked rib and a crooked nose. You count 4 snorers. One changes tempo like he's trying to win a contest no one asked for. Then comes the coughing. One cough, raspy and thin, another thick and phlegmy. Someone near the corner lets out a series of coughs that end in silence. No one reacts. Because here, coughing is background music. Now add in the whispers. Low, urgent, mostly in Latin, a few words in Greek, maybe some Aramaic. You realize, listening closely, that these aren't just bedtime conversations, they're deals. Trades, promises, warnings. Tomorrow behind the cistern. Don't tell him I took it. She's not eating again. And then the oddest one. If it rains tonight, we switch spots. You think that's a joke? Maybe you shift slightly, hoping to rest your head on your arms, a foot inches closer to your face. You rethink that plan. A few seconds later, someone starts humming. It's quiet, soft, a few notes, over and over, a tune that doesn't go anywhere. You don't recognize it. Neither does anyone else, because someone growls. Stop that. The humming stops, and now the silence feels worse. Historians still argue how much night discipline was enforced in Roman slave cells. Some argue that nighttime order was absolute silence mandatory. Others believe it varied wildly depending on the household and how sadistic the guard felt that month. Your fringe fact tonight. One household account listed loss of sleep discipline as a reason for docking slave rations. Which means yes, if you snore too loudly, you might eat less the next day. You breathe shallowly and try not to blink too loud. Then someone laughs. Not full out. Just a sharp exhale. A small joke passed between two bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. You can't hear what was funny, but you can feel the tension in the room shift like someone opened a tiny window. And then it slams shut again. A thump. The door rattles. Someone's foot kicked the wall in their sleep. You hold your breath. The bolt doesn't move. No guard. This time. But everyone goes still. Again. The older man with the chain collar clears his throat and mutters, "It's only funny until they open the door." No one laughs now. A few moments pass. Then someone near the center sighs and mutters a quiet prayer to Jupiter. Maybe, or to nothing in particular. You can't see who, but you know what they're praying for. Not freedom, not even food, just sleep. A few hours of darkness without a kick, a cough, or a whistle. You close your eyes and try. But between the rattles, the whispers, and the humming tune that never quite left your head, you don't sleep. Not really. You just pause. You jolt awake, or at least you think you do. There's no clear difference here between sleep and stunned stillness. You just blink, and suddenly time has shifted. Your limbs are numb. Your neck's at the wrong angle. Your stomach is still full of the grain mash mistake from earlier. And now your throat itches. Badly. You resist the urge to scratch, But it's not your skin that's the problem. It's the collar. Not yours yet, but close enough to count. You open your eyes and find it staring back at you from across the cell, half buried under a tunic scrap. A dull glint of metal catching the moonlight that dares to squeeze through the high, barred vent. A Roman iron slave collar, not decorative, not removable, not even comfortable. Just there. Just waiting. You crawl closer, careful not to disturb the pile of sleeping bodies. The thing is heavier than you expect. Solid iron, with a simple hinge and a crude locking mechanism. No padding, no engraving, except for a bit of text hammered in uneven letters. You tilt it to read, "I have run away. Detain me. Return to my master, Lucius Sealer, Baker, Trastevere." Oh, that kind of collar. Historians still debate how widespread these were, whether all household slaves were forced to wear them, or only those deemed problematic. But we have the physical evidence, dozens of real collars like this, unearthed across Rome, worn daily, always inscribed, sometimes even chained together for punishment. Your fringe fact tonight. At least one slave collar found near Ostia bore the words, "Hold me, for I am a runner, but I bite." So yes, some had personality. You pass the collar gently to the elder chained near the wall. He grunts, holds it like a relic. "They take your name," he says, "and give you a sentence." He's not wrong, because in Rome your identity becomes literal iron, around your neck, on display, always advertising who owns you, where you belong, and how far you'll get if you try to disappear. You ask softly? Does everyone get one? He shakes his head. Just the ones they want to keep track of. The ones they're afraid to lose, or the ones they've already lost once. You look around the room now with new eyes. How many necks here have worn collars like that? How many are wearing one under their tunic right now? And how many are still dreaming of running? There's a sound near the back of the cell. A shuffling, a small choke of breath. You see a boy, maybe 12, rubbing his neck in his sleep. No collar. But the habit's already there. Like a ghost. You lean back against the wall and feel your own skin. Still free. Still bare. But suddenly heavier. You ask the elder, "Did it hurt?" He looks at you for a long moment and says, "Not when they put it on. Just every day after." Then he turns away and closes his eyes. And you realize that in this cell, the worst part of the collar isn't the metal. It's what it says about you. It's what it says to you. And what it tells everyone else before you even open your mouth. You don't touch it again. You just sit very still, trying not to feel the phantom weight already pressing against your neck. You've stopped counting the hours. Time doesn't pass in here, it thickens. It clings. It stretches and warps until minutes feel like molasses and whole hours slide past unnoticed, while your back stiffens and your thoughts loop on repeat. But then softly, unexpectedly, someone speaks. Not whispers, not grunts, a full sentence. You flinch. It's the man across from you. The one with the thin scar down his cheek and the wrist chain that jangles softly every time he breathes too deeply. "You're new," he says, as though it's a surprise to neither of you. You nod slowly. In this place, even nodding feels like a risk. "I had your spot," he adds. "First night. 13 years ago." You blink. 13. He chuckles. "Don't worry, you won't last that long." You think he's joking. Maybe. You ask his name. He shrugs. "Doesn't matter. They call me Kinnies, means ash. Fitting." He shifts his weight, rubbing his wrist where the chain has carved its opinions into his skin. They don't want us talking, he murmurs. But sometimes, talking's all we've got. You settle into your spot again, listening. Sneeze starts to share, his voice low and hoarse but steady, like a fire that refuses to fully die out. He was born free. He says somewhere in southern Gaul, taken in a raid, sold twice, ended up here, in the belly of Rome. His first master was a tailor, the second a moneylender, the third just needed someone to blame. He says, you don't ask for more, you don't need it. You already know how that story ends in chains, in this room, on the same straw. Historians still argue about how much slaves talked to each other in captivity. Some say it was discouraged, even punished. Others believe shared language, songs, and stories helped preserve fragments of identity. But the record is clear on one thing. Stories traveled faster than shackles. Your fringe fact tonight. There's evidence that some enslaved people developed coded gestures or patterns of tapping, shared ways of communicating through walls or across courtyards without a single word. They called it the breath between blows. You ask Sinis why he talks to you. He smirks, because you still look like you believe there's a door out. Then his face shifts. Not unkindly, just older. They break that. Not all at once. A little every night. He taps his collarbone. That's where it breaks first. You hear someone cough behind you, then shuffle, then sigh. The room continues its rhythm of restless nothingness. You whisper. Do you dream Kinneys closes his eyes? Only of silence. You wait. And then, like a surprise gift, he mutters one last thing. I once sang in a temple. As a boy, you can't picture it. You don't try, because the man in front of you is not the boy who sang. Not anymore. The cell doesn't allow for that kind of continuity. It lets you exist, but only in pieces. And you start to wonder how long it takes before your story becomes just another sound in the dark. It starts as a twitch, an itch just behind your ear, then across your shoulder blade. And oh, there it is again, right on your shin. You scratch without thinking, then wince, because now you know you've got company. Not the snoring kind, not the whispering or the praying kind, the crawling kind. You pull your sleeve back and see it, a tiny reddish dot scuttling across your forearm like it owns the place. Which, frankly, it might. Welcome to the ecosystem that lives in everyone down here. Fleas, lice, mites. Whatever ancient six-legged horror has made this cell its ancestral homeland, it's not shy about sharing. And now it's your turn to host. Someone near you scratches their head. Another pulls at their tunic, swatting something invisible. The man you now know as Sinis says, without opening his eyes, stop scratching. You'll just bleed. You try. You fail. Because the itch is relentless. Everywhere. Like a whisper under your skin. You try swiping your hands across your legs quickly, hoping to trap one. Nope. Just more bites. And the feeling that your body has become a banquet. Historians still argue whether Roman slave quarters were cleaned regularly or left to rot. Some suggest straw bedding was replaced seasonally. Others say only the most visible areas were swept, usually right before a visitor. The deeper you were in the house, the less you mattered. And this cell matters to no one. Your fringe fact tonight. One Roman physician wrote a scroll about the proper method for delousing servants that involved olive oil, a heated comb, and in one disturbing case, a torch. Guess who didn't get any of those options? You get your fingernails and a prayer. You pull your tunic tight, tucking fabric into every edge, as though that might somehow create a barrier. It doesn't. Fleas hop, lice cling, and some of these tiny jerks bite through wool. Cinny shifts beside you. There's a trick, he says. Don't scratch where they are. Scratch where they're going. You stare at him. That's not a trick. You whisper. That's a confession. He grins first time you've seen it. Helps me sleep. You both chuckle, then immediately regret using your core muscles, because laughing makes your skin fold in itchy new ways. A few others are muttering now. You catch the word oil repeated twice. Someone else hisses. It was my turn to get the ashes. You wonder what that means, then see a boy smearing himself with grayish dust from the edge of the wall. Ash from the torch. He's trying to suffocate the bugs. You wonder if it works. You don't ask. Instead, you sit perfectly still, focusing on the parts of your body that aren't on fire, which is maybe your left elbow. For now, you drift in and out of itchy consciousness. You imagine your life as a flea wake-up, bite someone, dodge fingers, sleep on straw. Repeat. You briefly envy their consistency. Someone yelps quietly nearby. A new bite. An old one reopened. Doesn't matter, because by now, everyone's bitten, everyone's crawling, and no one's clean. The cell isn't just overcrowded, it's alive in the worst possible way. And tonight, the things that move the most aren't even people. The wheezing starts just before the torch outside burns low. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a soft, rhythmic rattle. At first you think someone's snoring wrong. Then it shifts, becomes wetter, harsher. There's a hitch behind every breath, like lungs that forgot how to inflate all the way. You look over and find him a man curled up by the far wall, knees to chest, eyes closed, his tunic's crusted with something dark. His skin glows faintly in the torchlight, but not in a healthy way. The others keep still, because this is the cell's doctor, or closest thing to it. A slave called Pavo. Means peacock? Irony? Probably. Nothing about him struts or shines. He's hunched, hollow-cheeked, one eye swollen halfway shut. But when someone gets sick, scratched, bitten, burned, or worse, they go to him. And tonight, someone else already has. He shifts now, crawling toward the wheezing man with the slow resignation of someone who's done this too many times and never once been thanked. You notice he has no supplies, no bag, no salves, just a cloth one scrap of linen wrapped around his arm and a wooden slat that might have been part of a crate once. He presses it gently to the man's chest, then leans in and listens. He whispers something you don't catch. The wheezing man doesn't respond. Pavo reaches for his cloth and dabs at the man's forehead, then his lips, then under his tunic. There's blood. Not a lot. Just enough to change the room. You hear the shift again, everyone noticing, everyone pretending they didn't. The kind of silence that doesn't come from comfort, but from experience. They've seen this before. You ask quietly, is he dying? Pavo doesn't look up. Not yet. You wait. He finally turns toward you and shrugs. Could be fever. Could be rot. Could be yesterday's lentils. In here, it all ends the same. You want to ask more? You don't. Because there's nothing Pavo can do. He has no tools, no medicine, no training, just hands. And a few tricks. He rubs ash from the floor into the man's gums. something about drying the heat. He checks the man's feet for swelling. He mutters to himself, counting something on his fingers. Historians still argue how much medical care enslaved people received in Rome. Some say households had trained slave physicians for basic wounds. Others argue the sick were ignored until they could no longer work, then sold, discarded, or quietly buried. The truth. Probably both, depending on the master. Your fringe fact tonight. One medical scroll found in Pompeii mentions slave-specific treatment, like bone setting using olive-soaked cloth and inducing vomiting with old wine mixed with sheep's urine. You try not to imagine the recipe. Pavo leans back now, wiping his hands on the cloth. It's not the sickness, he says. It's the space. You blink. No air. No sun. No food that isn't sour. You put that in a man long enough, and he rots from the inside. You want to protest? You want to believe someone higher up will notice. Help? Do something. But you already know the answer. No one opens this door for coughs. Only when it's quiet in here. Pavo returns to his corner, folding the bloody cloth into a square like it's something worth saving. The wheezing continues, slower now. And you realize that even illness has a protocol in this place. Wait. Worsen? Whisper. And hope you don't wake up worse than you fell asleep. You lie back down, barely able to hear yourself think over the breathing. Or the not breathing. And you try, desperately, not to start coughing yourself. You don't remember drifting off. But when you wake, your neck's twisted, your legs asleep, and someone else's foot is very gently pressing into your hip like it wants to claim that patch of floor. You shuffle. They grunt. Neither of you wins. It's still night? You think? The torchlight outside the door has dimmed into a vague amber smear. The wheezing has faded, either improved or ended. And now, in this half-light, half-silence, a few voices rise, soft, careful, hopeful. They're dreaming out loud, or trying to. Next year, someone says, I'll be in the kitchen. Another voice, I'll be gone. My master said so. And a third, barely audible. My brother's saving for me. No one mocks them, not even the senior slaves. Because this hour, the one right before the birds stir and the guards return, is the only time left to dream without punishment. Sinis. Your scar-faced neighbor leans in. They do this, he whispers. Every night, small lies for small comfort. You ask if it helps. He shrugs. Helps them? Doesn't help the rest of us sleep. Someone near the back claims they once had a horse, not rode one, owned it. The boy beside them says his mother made honey cakes with almonds. The old man in the corner chuckles and says, Last time I dreamed, I was already chained in it. Everyone goes quiet again, because that's the risk here. Not being chained, but dreaming unchained. Hope is dangerous. Historians still argue how much hope enslaved people in ancient Rome could afford to keep. Letters and graffiti suggest some clung to visions of freedom, manumission, or even small promotions within a household. Others gave up early, focusing only on surviving to the next bowl of mash. Your fringe fact tonight: some Roman slaves were given tokens tesserae as symbolic promises of eventual freedom. Most were lies, but a few were real. Enough to keep hope alive just long enough. Someone sighs near you and says, I had a real name once. No one asks what it was. Another voice pipes up, if I get out, I'll swim in the Tiber naked. The cell chuckles. Even Sinis cracks a smile. You'd get arrested. The dreamer grins. Better prison than this. You stare up at the ceiling. Not that there's much to see, just soot. cobwebs, and the shadow of iron bars above the door. But somehow, imagining the sky through all that makes your chest ache. You close your eyes and try your own dream. You picture a hill, a fig tree, clean air, a small loaf of warm bread, untouched by insects or elbows, and then snap, the sound of the door latch shifting. The guard. Maybe. The dreams stop instantly. Everyone returns to stillness. Back to breathing carefully. Back to pretending they don't want anything more than what's already in their hands. The latch doesn't open. False alarm. Still no one dreams aloud again after that. The moments passed. You lie back, heartbeat returning to something like calm. And you understand this isn't just a cell, it's a quiet trap. Not just of bodies, but of belief. Because in here, you don't hope out loud too often, or too clearly, or for too long. You just whisper it, then swallow it, then sleep if you can. The first whiff tells you everything. It slinks across the cell like a warning pungent, acidic, immediate. Even the snores hitch. Even the humming stops. Because someone's knocked over the bucket. Not the drinking one. The other one. You don't need light to know what just happened. You feel it in the way the air changes, thickens, becomes less breathable, and suddenly, much less philosophical. Someone groans. Someone else swears quietly. A shuffle. A scrape. A hiss of complaint. You do not want to be the one closest to it, which tonight, unfortunately, you are. You push backward, bumping into a wall of legs, knees, and someone's foot who is not in the mood to scoot over. You're trapped in the slow-motion panic of a dozen bodies trying to avoid a very small, very foul tidal wave in the dark. Because in here, the bucket isn't a convenience, it's a compromise. And when it fails, so does morale. Historians still argue whether Roman slave cells had dedicated latrine spaces or if buckets were the norm for overnight containment. In private homes, slaves were often forbidden from using the household latrine, especially during off hours. In larger estates, slaves might share a communal trench. In this type of cell buckets, if you're lucky. Your fringe fact tonight. One surviving Roman joke from a graffiti wall depicts a slave complaining, "My master feeds me wine, and now my bucket knows why the gods flood rivers." It's not funny, but it's real. The stench creeps now thick and bitter, settling low in the straw, turning the floor into a map of avoidance. You lift your feet, not high, just enough to hover. Cinny's beside you sighs. Third time this week. You ask, "Does anyone clean it?" He laughs soft, dry. You're assuming someone cares. Eventually, someone crawls toward the mess with the rag. Not to clean it, just to cover it, like a peace offering to the room. They mutter something in Latin you don't understand. Probably an insult, or a prayer. A few slaves plug their noses with scraps of tunic. Others just bury their faces in their arms and endure. The worst part? It will be hours before the door opens. No one moves toward the corner anymore. The wall has been surrendered, and the smell is now a character in the room. Loud, rude, pungently philosophical. You lie back, trying to think of something clean. Anything? Soap? Olive groves? A bakery at sunrise? You cling to that? Fresh bread? Warm oil? Breathing air that doesn't bite you back. You try to drift off again, but the odor keeps tapping you on the shoulder like a persistent acquaintance who doesn't believe in personal space. You hear someone gag softly, The man next to them groans and says, "Hold it in. If you throw up now, we'll need a second bucket." It's not a joke. Not really. You press your sleeve to your nose. You count slowly, hoping your brain will give up and let your senses numb. But deep down, you know this isn't the worst part. This is just routine. Just another chapter in the same story the cell tells every night. And the lesson: never sleep too close to the corner. It happens so quietly. You almost miss it. Just a breath a little sharper than the rest. Then a whisper, barely audible. 2 crusts. Tonight. You freeze because now you're listening to something important. Not prayers, not dreams. Deals. In the hush of early pre-dawn, the real currency of the slave cell starts to move favors. Smuggled scraps. Promises that might not be promises at all. Welcome to the underground market of desperation. You shift just enough to see what's happening. 2 figures, huddled near the door. One has something wrapped in cloth, could be food, could be fabric, could be both. The other leans close, nodding like they've rehearsed this. You catch a word, Olive. Then another floor tile. You have no idea what that means. You don't ask. In here, asking makes you part of the deal. And unless you're holding something worth trading, like a crust of bread, a length of thread, or information that can keep someone from punishment, you're better off silent. Sinis watches too. He doesn't move, doesn't blink, just murmurs. Don't bother. Their deals don't include you. You ask, what are they trading? He snorts. Last week, someone traded a song for half a peach. This week, probably a lie. Historians still argue whether slave-to-slave trade in private Roman homes was tolerated, punished, or quietly encouraged. Some owners allowed limited barter to reduce tension. Others cracked down, fearing solidarity more than theft. But the stories survive slaves slipping messages between tunics, hiding extra food under floor stones, trading chores, warnings, even secrets. Your fringe detail tonight. One satirical Roman poem includes a line about a slave who traded his silence for soap, which honestly sounds like a bargain. Back in the cell, the deal concludes. No handshakes, just nods. One crust passed, one look exchanged, one person backs away, someone coughs in their sleep. Another mutters, "He better not have sold my spot again." You blink. Sold your spot. Sinis sighs. Happens. Someone bribes the guard for a better sleeping place, or promises to give up a sick cousin in exchange for silence. You say, "That's awful." He says, "That's strategy." You start noticing more a woman tucking something into her sleeve, a stolen thread of linen. Maybe a boy shifting to sit closer to someone else, murmuring low and fast. A man near the back rolling up his tunic hem to reveal a scrap of dried meat sewn into the edge. Even in a place where nothing is allowed, everything still has a price. A breath of cooler air near the vent, worth a shared secret. A bit of cracked fig left in a corner, worth a favor that gets called in 3 nights from now. You glance down at your own hands, empty, untied, unclaimed. You got nothing. Which, down here, means you've got no leverage. You'll need something. Sinis says softly. You ask, "What kind of something?" he says. Doesn't matter. Just not nothing. He leans back, eyes closed again. Do you understand what he's really saying? Because in this cell, survival isn't just about food or space or silence. It's about value. What you know, what you hold, what you can promise without dying over it. And if you got nothing to offer, you're nothing at all. You're not asleep, not even close when it happens. A loud, sharp sneeze tears through the quiet. It echoes. Once, twice, then silence. Thick, anticipatory, like everyone's holding the same breath at once. A rustle, then a whisper. Idiot. Because in the Roman slave cell, you can cough, you can snore, you can even scream during a dream and probably get away with it. But sneezing? That's risky. It's too sudden, too loud, too noticeable. And it invites attention. The worst kind. A moment passes. You pray it goes unnoticed. Then clink. The sound of keys. Your stomach drops. There's a scuffle of sandals outside the door. Someone mutters, "By the gods." Then the bolt draws back with that familiar scrape, and the door swings open just enough to let the guard's torch spill inside like an accusation. He doesn't enter right away. He lets the light do the work. Then he speaks, low and irritated. Who did that? No one answers. You can hear the dripping from the vent, the shuffle of limbs pulling closer to walls. You smell the smoke of the torch, but you don't hear a single name. Not yet. Then the guard steps in. This time, he carries something new, a stick. Not a club. A vine cane. Thin, fast, and made for correcting mistakes. He's sober. Worse than drunk. He walks along the perimeter. Slowly. Someone made noise. Still no answer. He kicks a heel. No response. He taps the cane against the stone floor. The sound is too crisp in this sour, fetid air. Sinis doesn't move. The boy with the scabbed knuckles beside him buries his face in his knees. You say nothing. You know better now. Historians still argue how frequent corporal punishment was inside private slave quarters. Some say daily. Others claim household slaves were punished less often than field slaves, as they were more visible to guests. But Roman law allowed punishment at the owner's discretion for almost anything. Your fringe fact tonight. One surviving manual advised owners to punish no more than 3 at once to avoid exhausting the punisher. Empathy? No. Efficiency. The guard stops near the center. You. He's looking at someone. Not you. The boy who sneezed. Maybe. It's hard to tell. Everyone's pretending to be asleep now, eyes shut. Muscles frozen. The guard taps the cane against his own boot. Then, without warning, crack. The first strike lands. Not a scream. Just a grunt. Second strike. Third. You count 6 in total. Then he walks away. No names. No warnings. Just the message. Make noise. Lose your skin. He exits. The door slams. The bolt slams louder. And then the silence that returns is different. Heavier. Embarrassed. Even the snoring stops. You wait 5 full minutes before you breathe normally again. Sinis eventually whispers, "Could have been worse." You don't ask how. Because you already know. It always can be. You lie back down, eyes wide, heartbeat loud, and now more than ever, you understand the hierarchy here. The master owns you. The guard controls you. The room watches you. And every noise is a roll of the dice. There's a moment brief, uncelebrated, but unmistakable when the cell begins to stir. Not with urgency, not with hope, but with habit. The first shuffle is a man repositioning his aching leg. Then a woman untwisting the scarf she'd used to cover her nose from the stink. Someone grunts, and another lets out a breath that's not quite a sigh. It's almost morning. You can feel it in the floor the way the cold has started to lift just slightly. The way a faint trickle of light from the high grate becomes not just silvery suggestion, but the beginning of a shape. It means nothing good. Just the start of the next round. You sit up slowly. every joint creaking like a bad door. The air smells less like breath and more like sweat now, like something lived in too long by something trying too hard to survive. And the bucket still overturned, still steaming, still ignored. A few slaves begin stretching. A few just clutch their sides and lean against the wall, waiting for the cramp in their lower backs to fade. You feel like you've been chewed and spat out by the floor. Sinis mutters without looking at you. First shuffles the signal. Time to prepare. You ask, for what he says, for being seen. Because soon, the guard will return. Soon, the door will open, and the people inside this room will stand not proudly, not willingly but correctly, in rows or ranks, or whatever shape their master expects today. You shuffle to your feet, knees wobble, ankles protest. Someone coughs again, worse now. Louder. Still, everyone gets up. It's the rule. Historians still argue how much mourning ritual was demanded of enslaved people in Roman homes. Some suggest daily inspections. Others describe rosters read by candlelight. Each name met with a nod or a lash. What's clear is this sunrise meant accountability. Your fringe fact tonight. Some households marked attendance using a carved tablet called a libellus, a wooden slate with wax insets where the steward etched each slave's name and task. Miss a task, get replaced. Or punished. A man near the door whispers, "Stand tall or get smacked." Another adds, "Don't look the master in the eye unless he drops something." The woman who had the middle space along the wall smooths her hair with a damp scrap of cloth. Her face is blank. Too blank. Like she's painting over everything behind her eyes. Sinis reaches down and grabs your wrist not hard, just enough to adjust your posture. "Straighten your back," he says. "You're a servant. Not a sack of grain." You nod. Not because you agree, but because your body obeys faster than your brain now. Outside, the first full bird call whistles into the air. It's sharp. Clean. Too bright for this place. Someone mutters, "Mockingbird? Must be market day?" And just like that, the cell organizes itself. The chaos retreats. The quiet returns. Not the restful kind. The kind before judgment. You line up. You watch the door. You wait to be counted. And in this moment surrounded by stink, sores, stiff joints, and yesterday's punishment still clinging to the air, you realize something deeply Roman. You don't start the day. The day starts you. Someone's missing. It takes you a moment to notice. The light filtering through the high vent is still faint, the air still dense with sleep, sweat, and other people's breath. But something's different, like a corner of the room has been erased. You glance left, you glance right, and then it hits you. The wheezing man is gone. No more choking breaths. No more wet rattling in the back of the throat. Just absence. You say nothing. No one else does either. It's not that no one noticed. It's that everyone knows what not to say. Sinis sees you looking. He whispers, "They came in during the change of watch, quiet-like. Took him before the rest woke." You ask, "Where did they take him?" He shrugs. "If he's alive, somewhere worse. If not, he'll be buried before breakfast." You stare at the patch of straw where the man had curled up. Night after night, it's flat, damp, still warm, probably, and already claimed by someone else because space is scarce, and grief doesn't buy you elbow room. Someone near the door mutters, "First one this month." Another replies, "You sure about that silence?" Because really, how would they know? No one announces it. There's no roll call, no memorial, Just the quiet recalibration of bodies filling in the gaps like the cell never had one less. Historians still argue how Romans handled deaths among enslaved people. Some say the bodies were burned without ceremony, dumped in communal pits. Others mention quick cremations paid for by the household as a matter of hygiene, not mourning. Your fringe fact tonight. A clay tablet recovered near the Aventine Hill lists a funeral fund contributed to by slaves themselves. They pooled savings if they had any just for the chance of a proper burial. You whisper. Did he have a name? Sinis nods. He had 3. None of them were his. And that's the part that sits deepest in your chest. Because in here, death isn't the end. It's just another moment you're not present for. The guard won't mention it. The steward won't mark it. The master won't know it happened. But the room knows. Even if it doesn't flinch, you glance at the door. Still closed. And for the first time since you entered this place, you realize the scariest part isn't that someone disappeared. It's how easy it was. One breath, one silence, one less shadow in a cell already crowded with forgetting. You swallow hard and try not to notice how many others are starting to sound like him. The door swings open, not fast, not dramatic, just wide enough for the morning light to spill in and burn your eyes like a punishment you didn't ask for. It cuts the cell in half-shadowed bodies, recoiling on instinct while the beam crawls across the floor like it's searching for someone to drag out. You brace yourself, because this is the part where names get called. Not real names. Not the ones your mother whispered when you were small. Not the ones you might have signed, once with pride. Just identifiers, numbers, jobs, nicknames. Or if the steward's feeling lazy, that tall one or you, with the limp. The guard steps inside with the steward behind him. Tunic clean. Wax tablet in hand. Stylus ready. The steward's face is smooth and indifferent. His voice, when it comes, is clipped and practiced. Field shift? 4. He reads from the tablet like he's naming livestock. Barrow. Salvius. The Greek. New one. Sinis doesn't flinch. But your heart? It dives straight into your stomach. You're the new one. Someone nudges you? Another smirks. Congratulations. You made the list. You stumble forward, head low, eyes on the floor. That's the trick. Don't meet the steward's gaze. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't let your face say anything other than yes. Master. The guard points to the others. 3 men who've clearly done this before. One's barefoot. One's wrapped his hand in linen like a crude bandage. The third just stares straight ahead, jaw locked. You fall in line behind them. And for a moment, just a moment, you think maybe this is your way out. Out of the cell, out of the stink, out into the world again. Even if it's just a field and a tool and 100 lashes waiting if you sneeze wrong. Sinis catches your eye. He doesn't nod. He doesn't smile. He just mouths, "Don't speak." The steward turns to check his list again. He doesn't call Sinis. Doesn't call the sick. Doesn't call the boy who whispers in sleep. Just the ones who look able. Or close enough. Historians still argue whether slave assignments were chosen based on health, skill, or just random cruelty. Records show field slaves often rotated through housework during the colder months. Others were sent out daily and returned by torchlight. Some never came back. Your fringe fact tonight: a scratched wall fragment in Pompeii reads, "Sent to plow. Returned with none. The ox lived." It's a joke. Probably. The steward marks the tablet. Move. The guard grunts. The line begins to walk. You glance back. No one watches you leave, because the room has already closed over your absence like a bruise smoothing itself out. And you know what they know. When names are called, it's not about who's chosen. It's about who's left behind. You step into the light, not free, not lucky, just mobile. And maybe slightly more visible to the world, which, in this place, is its own kind of danger. The light hurts. It should feel like relief after all that darkness, after the stink, the heat, the breath of 30 other bodies pressed into your skin like a second tunic. But it doesn't. It burns. Your eyes squint against it. The morning sun in Rome has no patience, no compassion. It reflects off the pale stone courtyard like a sneer. Your skin prickles, your joints complain. You blink and catch the silhouette of a fountain far ahead. Too far. You're not headed that way. The steward leads the line to a side gate. The street beyond is quiet, still waking, still stretching, still unaware that 4 people have just been plucked from the underground and marched out like tools in need of sharpening. The Greek stumbles. The man behind him whispers, "Don't fall." He'll notice. He, the guard, still watching, still holding the cane. You walk in silence. The world above the cell is almost offensively normal. People laugh, dogs bark, bakers push carts loaded with fresh bread, and for a second, the smell hits you so hard you nearly stop walking. Bread. Real bread. Golden, yeasty, alive. You haven't had anything that wasn't gray in days. Sinise was right. You don't start the day starts you. And right now it's pulling you toward the edge of a field beyond the domus walls, past the lemon trees, into the stretch of packed earth waiting to blister your hands. The steward gestures. The 4 of you stop. No tools. Not yet. First, another list. He reads aloud. Slowly this time. 2 names are called. The men nod and are pointed down the hill to the lower terraces. Then yours. You step forward. He eyes you. New. Still soft. He mutters. You don't speak. He watches you a moment longer, then gestures toward a stone wall. You're with him. You turn. The Greek? Silent. Stooped? Face unreadable? Great. You don't ask what you're doing, because here, the job doesn't come with instructions. Only expectations. The steward walks off. The guard doesn't. He stands there, arms crossed, watching as you begin. The work is rough clearing undergrowth, hauling baskets of earth, scraping packed dirt with a blunt-edged tool someone kindly refers to as a hoe. It's not a hoe, it's a rock on a stick. The sun climbs, your breath shortens, your tunic clings to your skin, already soaked through with sweat. The Greek doesn't speak. He just moves slow, steady, mechanical. You try to match him, fail, fall behind. The guard coughs. Loudly, you pick up the pace. Historians still argue whether household slaves were used for field labor, or if it was only the familia rustica, those stationed on agricultural estates. But texts and records show that overflow slaves, those not deemed skilled or trustworthy, were often sent to fields on rotation. Your fringe fact: 1 household record notes, returned 4 with blistered hands, requested 3 more, ones who do not cry. You feel a blister forming already. You say nothing. The Greek glances at your hands and shakes his head once, either pity or warning. You keep scraping. An hour passes, or 3. Time bends. Eventually, the steward returns. No list this time. He just points, not at you, at the man beside you. The Greek lowers his tool, nods once, then he's gone. Taken. Not a word. Not a glance back. And now it's just you, alone in a patch of Roman dirt, with your blisters, with your silence, with the realization that not everyone comes back. The guard finally speaks. Sundown. He says, "That's all. Not a promise. Just a time. Maybe you'll return to the cell. Maybe not. Maybe you'll be sold. Assigned elsewhere. Forgotten. The only certainty you'll keep digging until someone says otherwise. You lift your tool and swing. The sun dips low. It doesn't set gently, just drops behind the rooftops like it's tired of looking at you. The air cools slightly, but your tunic is still soaked. Your hands raw, your knees weak. You've dug. You've hauled. You've sweated through your bones. You're still here? Barely. The guard returns without ceremony. Just a grunt and a nod. Back. That's all you get. You don't ask where the Greek went. You don't ask if you're going to see him again. You fall in line behind another pair of field slaves, both too tired to walk straight. The path curves past the market, where oil lamps flicker to life and merchants shout about figs and lentils. The scent of roasted meat dances on the breeze like mockery. Your stomach growls. No one hears it. Back through the side gate, back through the courtyard, back past the water basin you're not allowed to touch. And then down. Down into the dark. Down into the cell. The door creaks open. Someone inside says, "He made it." Someone else mutters, "Shame." You don't know if that's sarcasm or sincerity. You step inside and the air hits you like a wet, slap-stale breath. Old bodies. The bucket still unemptied. You take your same spot near the wall, curl into it, and rest your forehead against the stone that remembers you now. You've survived your first full Roman slave day, and the prize you get to do it again, tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Unless you're sold, unless you vanish, unless you don't survive the night. Sinis glances at you, then hands you something. A crust, hard, small, possibly stolen. You accept it like it's sacred, because in here, it is. You chew in silence. You breathe shallow. You ignore the crawling itch returning to your shoulder. And finally, your body begins to collapse into something like rest. Not peace. Never peace. But pause. In the quiet, someone says, "You'll get used to it." Another voice answers, "You'll stop minding before you stop hoping." No one argues. Historians still argue how long enslaved people survived in places like this. Some say a few years, others say decades, if you learn the rules. The sad truth: most weren't remembered long enough to count. Your fringe fact tonight: a scratched wall in a Roman cellar reads, "Still breathing, still mine." You don't know who wrote it, but you know exactly how it feels, because right now you're still breathing, still claimed, still here. And the cell, it doesn't celebrate you, it just closes in again like it never let you leave. You close your eyes and listen to the chains, the breaths, the whispers starting again, just as they always do. Because in a Roman slave cell, surviving the night isn't the miracle. It's waking up for the next one. Now let your eyes close. Let the darkness settle, not the darkness of the cell, but the kind that lives behind your eyelids. Softer, slower, quiet like dust settling after a long storm. You're no longer in the stone room. The chains are gone. The noise has faded. The itch has stopped. Now you're floating. Above the walls. Above the memory of hunger. Above the sound of footsteps on ancient tile. Feel the air lighten. Soft as a breath that finally doesn't hurt. You're wrapped in warmth now, real warmth. Not the heat of too many bodies pressed together, but the kind that comes from safety, from stillness. You're lying on soft fabric. You smell lavender, not iron. You hear the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. A world with no lists, no callers, no one reading your name from a wax tablet and deciding your fate. Only this moment, and it's yours. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles forget the stone, the blisters, the stiff corners of fear. Here, there is no morning call, no guard shadow, no bucket in the corner, only rest, only peace. You made it out. You're still breathing. And now you don't have to do anything else. Just drift, slowly, gently, far from the past. Far from the cell until there's nothing but breath and sleep and silence.